Welcome, everyone, to the 12th episode of my new podcast, Pug, Fireball, and Company. My guest today is Federal Judge Robert Pratt, who has played an important role in the naturalization ceremonies before Iowa Cub games at Principal Park in Des Moines for several years. As in reading your bio, and I also found out that you grew up on a farm near Emmitsburg. You had a brother and two sisters. Your dad farmed, and your mom worked for the ISU Extension Service. She retired till the mandatory retirement age.
Right.
So Judge Pratt graduated from Loras College in Dubuque and Creighton University School of Law in Omaha. He started his practice as a lawyer for the Polk County Legal Aid Society. Then he practiced with two law firms emphasizing criminal defense and plaintiffs' personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security disability. He then established his own practice where he continued to emphasize plaintiffs' personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security disability claims. In private practice, Judge Pratt tried more than 40 cases to verdict and argued 25 cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, in addition to 10 cases before the appellate courts of Iowa. He was Chief Judge of the Southern District of Iowa from 2006 to 2011 and served on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th and 9th Circuits. He was chosen by the Federal Judicial Center to serve as a mentor judge for newly confirmed judges in 2010 and 2014. He was nominated by President Bill Clinton in 1996 and 1997 and was confirmed by the U.S. Senate in 1997. He started serving on the job in July 1st, 1997. He has been the 8th Circuit's representative on the Judicial Conference Committee on Information Technology. He has also been asked to testify before the U.S. Sentencing Commission. He has published cases involving many areas of federal and state law. He has also written and published articles involving his legal aid work in the early 1970s, federal sentencing, trial judging, and disability rights. Good afternoon, Judge Pratt.
Good afternoon, Steve. It's nice to be with you, and thank you for all your work to further the cause of America's pastime.
Thank you. I hope I can do a small part. Before we get into your judicial career, I'm interested. Did you play baseball in high school or college?
I didn't. High school baseball, I'm old enough, Steve, that I tell people this, and they were sure I'm fibbing. Emmitsburg High School, I went to public high school, did not have a girls' basketball team. There was no wrestling. There was no high school baseball. The only sports that I recall, and I'm 77 years old, were high school football, high school basketball, and track. And I wasn't good at any of them. So my memory is probably clouded by that fact, but no.
How big was your graduating class in high school?
There were 51 people in my graduating class from high school, yes.
How big is Emmitsburg, or how big was it then?
It was about 3,000, and at the time I graduated, St. Mary's High School was in existence, and so they probably had 30 graduates in their class in 1965. But since 1965, when both of those classes, my public school and St. Mary's, the town and the county have been shrunk considerably by the farm crisis and the other things that we all know that's happened to rural Iowa. So I would say, I don't know the exact population. My guess is it's still probably about 3,000. That'd be my guess, yeah. And it's still the sister city of Dublin.
Oh, Dublin, Ireland?
It is. They have a member of Parliament come to Emmitsburg every year. Robert Emmet was a famous Irish patriot,
Oh.
And he was beheaded, even though he was a Protestant. He actually stood up for the landowning rights of the Catholics. And he was beheaded by the British at age 21. His head rolled down if you're ever in Dublin, you can see the place that his head rolled down. And so Robert Emmet is who the town's named after. And there are only three, this is probably more than you ever wanted to know, Steve. There are only three Robert Emmet statues in the world. One is at the Irish Embassy in New York, or in D.C. One is in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and the third is in Emmetsburg, Iowa. So, if you need to know something about Irish history, you should read the story of Robert Emmet.
Well, maybe this summer I better take a road trip to Emmetsburg. I've never been there.
They're very nice people, and it's a very beautiful part of the state. So, yeah, that'd be a good thing.
Well, how did you get involved in these naturalization ceremonies? Was this your idea or Michael Gartner's, or how did this happen?
It's like most of my ideas, Steve. I stole them fair and square from other people. I was actually, as you recited in your resume part of your introduction, um, the each spring judicial, the Federal Judicial Center, which tries to help and educate federal judges, has a program each year for about 3 days in Washington where the federal courts, in terms of the district court, there are 94 of them, and I needn't go into the rest of it. But so we had a meeting. I learned from a colleague of mine, I think it was Jerry Rosen, who's a federal judge from Detroit, he's now retired, that he was thinking about it or had already done it. So I would love to claim that I was the sole person who thought this up. That's not true. I got the idea, as I say, from someone else. I don't know if it was Judge Rose or others, but Michael Gartner, the owner of the Cubs, I would frequently go to the now closed Cub Club for lunch. It's near the federal courthouse. And I became friends with Michael. I don't think I knew him before. I knew who he was, but I don't think I knew him. In any event, we had lunch. I said, we ought to do that. It'd be fun, and the people would like it. And he took me up on it, and he's pretty adventurous. And I would say at the time, well, he no longer owns the Iowa Cubs, but an uncommon owner in terms of his thinking and the community involvement. He's done such a great, I think they were close in 1999 to losing the Cubs, and he and a partner of his, and I don't know the exact arrangements, but I don't know if the word is save the Cubs, but they took the Cubs, they bought the Cubs and got the city involved. And, you probably know this, but I've been told by people who have knowledge that the Iowa's AAA city is one of the smallest, maybe the smallest in AAA baseball, and yet we do well in terms of fandom and people attending, and so that's the way it started. Michael thought it would be a good idea. I shared it with, I think, I asked the marshal's office, and the U.S. Marshals are responsible for the security of the federal courthouse and federal judges. And I asked the federal marshals, and they thought this was something that they could handle as well. And I asked ICE. ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, because, as you undoubtedly know, there's a great deal of controversy about their work. And I wanted to make sure, we had to coordinate all of these elements to make sure that it worked. And so I got ICE involved, and I've done off-site ceremonies with naturalizations at other places. I did one at the Jordan House in West Des Moines, is a place that was a part of the Underground Railroad. So I had, it's my, judicial outreach. And, I tell people, one of the great parts about my job is I get to work with the public. And I tell people when they come to the U.S. courthouse to serve on juries or whatever, I always tell them that this is your system. It doesn't belong to the judges or the lawyers. And so judicial outreach is a really important aspect of judging, be it state, federal, or otherwise. And the wonderful part about my work is that when you have people who come, lay people who, they approach jury duty specifically with great anxiety and they're anxious. They don't want to serve. They've heard all of these things. They're basically not true about jury duty. And, once they get selected, and as I say, they're very reluctant to serve for what they think is a good reason. But once they get selected to serve, the vast majority of them understand, oh, this is a pretty good system and I can see how it works. And it's not like on TV. I said, no, it's not like on TV. So, anyway, working with the public and, demonstrating new citizens and introducing them, to 10,000 people or whatever it was at Principal Park is an important part of judging. And it's just not what you do within the confines of the building. So I found it to be a great way to educate the people at large about immigration. We usually do immigration ceremonies in the U.S. District Court, and there's no reason that and the seating is limited. Sometimes we have an overflow room where people can actually watch, but people who support new immigrants and migrants to the United States, they come to this ceremony, and I have found, and I think if you talk to people who go to ceremonies, that they say, "Oh, well, we didn't know, what citizens have to go through to learn to be new citizens, and it's really an important and inspiring, if you will, process." And so, all of that kind of comes to the fore when you have new citizens who they're on the ball field. Michael Gartner always does such a good job introducing everybody, and they're on the ball field, waving their flags, and their friends and supporters are in the crowd, and it's the 4th of July, and it's just kind of a natural. And so I was so fortunate to do it for so many years. Now, that's too long an answer, so never be afraid to cut me off. But that's kind of the
What year did this start? Do you recall?
I want to say that it was 04, 05.
Uh,
I think President Bush, George W. Bush, was president at the time. And, we would always play whoever the sitting president was, they have pre recorded a
oh,
message to new citizens. And at the end of the ceremony, we would always play, whether it was President Bush or President Obama or President Trump or President Biden, we'd always play the welcoming of the president. And, the thing I liked is, some people who didn't like that particular president would boo. I thought, well, and if you knew Michael Gartner, he would say, well, that's fine. They got a First Amendment right to boo or clap or whoever. So, it combined kind of the First Amendment and America's love with baseball. And for people who know about the national pastime, they know that baseball has played a huge part in welcoming immigrants to the United States. I mean, where would MLB, or for that matter, minor league ball be without the Dominican Republic, and Venezuela and Puerto Rico and, Japan, so it's an international sport. It's one that welcomes, all comers. And, I think, yeah, yeah. So it's just,
yeah, there's many more of those people than there are blacks playing professional baseball now, at least in Major League Baseball, which is kind of odd since it all started with Jackie Robinson, and Major League Baseball is trying to do something about that, but they tend to go to football and basketball now.
well, if you're ever at Principal Park and on the Michael Gardner has a quote which I really like. It's from Buck O'Neill, and the quote goes something like, "Nobody ever took their grandson to see their first football game." But everybody remembers their grandfather or father taking them to their
Yeah.
first baseball game. And I always think of Billy Crystal in City Slickers, where he describes going to Yankee Stadium with his father for the first time. And, I think if you're a father with a son or a daughter, it's just a natural taking them to the ballpark and explaining to them about how to score and what the game is about. And really, it's immigrant roots. And, Jackie Robinson did bring the United States kicking and screaming into the 20th century by his sacrifices. And, I think that his story is so compelling that, immigrants and others would think, wow, he had to go all through that. And, it's very much an inspiring story. So, yeah.
Mhm. So, have you done those ceremonies every year they've had them?
We did them every consecutive year through COVID, and the last 2 years I have not done them.
Okay.
One of my colleagues who succeeded, I asked him to succeed me doing it. Maybe it's been time goes so fast. Maybe it's been 3 years now, but he's a wonderful new judge in our court as of 2022, and he has, I believe, he has four sons. I think he has an older son and then three triplets, and it's Judge Loker, and Judge Loker loves baseball, and so he's doing, you know, I the people at Principal Park tell me he's doing a wonderful job, and it's my hope that it continues because I think, I've never gotten anybody who didn't come who didn't enjoy it, and many people have written me nice letters, and you know, it's the one thing I can probably do without making someone mad, because you're a judge. People are going to leave. Somebody's going to be disappointed, and sometimes. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful. I got more out of it. I'm sure I got more out of it than the citizens who were watching it.
How many people became U.S. citizens during the time you participated in the ceremonies? Do you have any idea?
How many?
Yeah, how many?
Well, I don't know the number, but at one point, Michael Gartner did tell me that during the time I had done it, that the number of people who had been naturalized and made U.S. citizens exceeded 500. So I know that's at least 10 times, because we'd usually have somewhere between 20, sometimes as high as 35. So I know it's more than 10 times, but I don't know how many more. It could be 15. I mean, I'm sure Michael has ahead, or probably still
Right.
has the records.
Count.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So in 2020, of course, we had COVID. There was no minor league baseball season. Did they still have a ceremony at some other place?
What we did on 2020 is we had a larger ceremony where people came and stood in the outfield apart on Constitution Day. Constitution Day is September 17th. It has been set aside by the Congress as a time that everybody should observe Constitution Day. So I believe it was Constitution Day where we had a bigger crowd, because you didn't have the problem of security and the rest of it. And so, yeah, we did it in 2020, even though it was COVID. And so, yeah, so.
Let's take a short break here, but I'll tell my listeners that today I'm introducing a new feature, a trivia contest on my podcast. And if you think you know the answer, email me at supercub48@gmail.com. That's supercub, SUPERCUB 48@gmail.com. So here's the question. What was unusual about the Iowa Cubs game on June 14th, 2008 against the Nashville Sounds? So if you know the answer, email me. Am I not? In my next podcast, I'll announce the winner, and maybe somehow we can come up with a little prize. Maybe I can get the Iowa Cubs to give me something to give to that contest winner. Okay. So what countries have the U.S. citizens come from?
Well, I would say, I mean, all countries is the right answer. I would say if you ask me, and this is totally anecdotal, I haven't any statistics to back this up, but if you ask me, I would say that the vast majority of immigrants come from Africa and South America. Um, that's just off the top of my head. There are still many European immigrants as well, but in terms of the continents, I would say that South America and Africa definitely have had the most people at the ballpark ceremonies.
Uh, what are some of the what are some of the major points you tried to make during your remarks to the new citizens? What did you
Well,
stress?
I tried to emphasize to them the fact that America did not have a caste system, that we didn't uh, tell people how to think about political matters. It's really economic matters, social matters, what religion. I tried to give what I would think of it in general terms as a libertarian approach that, and emphasizing the responsibility that citizens have to participate. I would talk about voting and jury service and being an important a participant in your civic affairs. But I would also say that, don't think because one group happens to be in control at one time that you must join this group. The importance of emphasizing minority rights, that because the majority happens to believe one way, that's not indicative that you have to join that. That citizenship is not something you inherit, it's a matter of right. So I tried to emphasize that American citizenship, unlike in many countries, is something that you have as a matter of right, and it's not dependent upon class or race or religion. And in America, you can be of whatever religion or no religion. You can believe in whatever political views you have on the right or on the left or in the middle. It doesn't matter. No one can tell you what to do. Kind of a libertarian approach. And, I used to quote many of the Supreme Court or historical figures. I recall that I quoted Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said, America is a great country, and it's a great country because we've recognized our faults and tried to, make amends, be it racial justice and bringing women into the full life of the country. And, we're a great country because we recognize that we have things that can be improved. And you have a duty as a new citizens to help us improve the country and you know, so that was kind of I would still call it a libertarian or participatory uh, thoughts that I had. Yeah,
So, how were the ceremonies received by the new citizens and other people in the stands at Principal Park?
everybody loved it. I never got. While I was at the ballpark, I never got anybody that said, "Well, this is a terrible thing. We shouldn't be doing this." Kind of my first. I think the very first year we did it, Michael Gardner came up to me and he said, "Well, he says there was this little Bosnian woman who was a new citizen. She was walking down the aisle and she had a beer at least as big as she was. She said, 'I now an American citizen.'" And the crowd would really get into it when the new citizens would be waving their flags and I don't know. It's a very enthusiastic participatory thing. I mean, baseball is a game you got to be dedicated to, no two baseball games I see are ever the same. Baseball is kind of a subtle support, subtle sport. It's not one that you can understand without studying it. I don't want to make it sound too complicated, but unlike this citizenship ceremony is something that I think everybody learns from, because people who have lived here, they just take their citizenship for granted. The things we talk about the libertarian nature of the country, about being able to believe whatever you want and be any kind of politics or religion or that you wanted to. They think, oh, well, that's, I didn't know that's what, new citizens do. So I always thought it was a participatory activity.
Yes, I ushered for the I Cubs up the mezzanine from 2015 to 2019 and 2022, and I would watch the new citizens, come up to the mezzanine with their families, and just boy, how joyous they were, and just like it was the biggest thing in their life that ever happened. Uh, what can U.S. citizens learn from watching other people become U.S. citizens, or can they learn anything?
Well, yeah, they can, take to heart the idea that, citizenship is not supposed to be a spectator sport. That you really get out of it what you put into it. And if you're active in your community in whatever way you want to be active, whether it's a club or, uh, whatever, a political party, church, whatever your activities are, that's part of being a citizen and putting your 2 cents in, as it were. And I think that they learned that from, you know, when we do it at the courthouse, we have the Secretary of State's office who's there registering uh, uh, the new citizens to vote. And I think the statistics are new citizens have a higher rate of voting than any other people that live here. And I think one of the scandalous things about our country is the lack of participation in elections compared to, like, countries in Europe or in Africa, third world countries, have a much higher degree of participation. So I think the new citizens truly value their ability to participate in the community life in the life of their community. And so I think citizens learn that by watching the new citizens. So.
Well, thanks, Judge Pratt, for spending part of your day with us. I know we had to overcome some hurdles. To listen to my other podcasts with just guests as Sam Burnaby, Randy Wayhofer, and Alex Cohen of the Iowa Cubs, and former major leaguers Jim Marshall, Byron Brown, and Rich Nye, you can go to www.youtube.com/at Steve Dunn at capital S capital D hyphen 09I. You can also get my book, Pug Fireball and Company, 116 Years of Professional Baseball, by going to pugfireballandcompany.com. It's also available at several bookstores in central Iowa. Let's not forget about the Chicago Cubs and the Iowa Cubs, even though we're in the 20 below weather. We'll play baseball sooner than later. The Cubs will open the 25 season on March 18th, 19th in Japan against the LA Dodgers, and the Iowa Cubs open the 25 season on Friday, March 28th at home against Omaha. Good day, everyone.